Wallace County, Kansas, has never been known as a place of easy living. The people of this county scrape out their living with their bare hands. But along with those rough edges, I knew the people of Wallace County to be good-natured, kind-hearted people. My family lived in the county in the late 1800s and early 1900s. As far as I knew, my family members were just more of the same type of people that worked so hard to earn their living. It wasn't until many years later that I learned the horrid details surrounding a series of tragic events involving my family in the 1890s. As a young lady in the 1940s, I was helping my mother in Denver, Colorado. Flossie, my mother, had just purchased a house from an old man whom I did not know. As I opened a closet to clean off the top shelf, I came upon a curious manuscript. It was titled, "The Account of How I Killed a Man in Wallace County, Kansas, and McKinley's was hung for a crime I did." An instantly recognizable look of fear and anger flashed across my mother's face before she said,
"Please burn it up and forget it. But burn it."
In spite of my mother's words, I set the manuscript down with the intent to delve into it later to read the entire story. When I came back sometime later, I went straight to the shelf, only to discover the manuscript was gone. I called to my mother, "Mama, where are those papers?" She answered with words that have haunted me ever since that day. She said, "I burned them. I didn't want that old man to come and murder me because I had his confession." That day set off a curiosity inside me to find out the story that was hidden from me for so long. These are the events as I came to know them. In the 1890s, the McKinleys and Corleys were neighbors in the northern township north of the town of Sharon Springs. Lottie McKinley married Sprague Corley, and Lottie's family did not approve of the union. William McKinley, Lottie's father, insisted that Corley should pay him with a wagon and team. Lottie did not favor the request, and it caused a rift between her and her family. One story goes that after they were married, her father and brothers agreed that they would kill Corley. In late April or early May of 1894, Fred McKinley, who was 17 at the time, arrived at Sprague's house and asked if he could stay with them after having a falling out with his father. Sprague's wife, Fred's sister, had gone to town, and Sprague was to go later and pick her up from a relative's place. But before he would see her again, Fred killed him with a grubbing hoe as he was out at work in his garden. Fred then dragged his body to the nearby creek to bury him in the sand. After doing so, he took Sprague's six-shooter, saddle, and horse and ran away and hid at a sheep ranch south of Kit Carson, Colorado. The next day, Sprague's mother was looking for her son and found his lifeless body, partially covered in dirt and being eaten by a herd of pigs. Mr. Paxton heard her scream and found her with her son's body. He rode a sorrel horse to the Yegg place, where there was a party going on with the sheriff in attendance. Paxton recounted the horrors, Several buggies and the sheriff headed off to the McKinleys to arrest the culprits they believed to be guilty of the crime. The sheriff had his six-shooter out as William and Lewis came out of the house.
Lewis and William McKinley, I have a warrant for your arrest for murder. Let me see your hands. Turn around. Put your hands behind your back.
He read to them from a piece of paper before placing them in the buggy and taking them to the jail in Sharon Springs. Fred was arrested later and brought back to Sharon Springs, where he was kept in the hotel, with men guarding him. It is said he confessed to the murder of Sprague Corley, but insisted he was instructed to do it by his father and brother. One night, a mob gathered to take justice into their own hands. In the months prior, a man had been murdered, and no one had ever been punished for it. They wanted to make sure that did not occur this time. They broke into the jail where William and Lewis were being held. They tied the father and son's hands and led them to the southwest corner of town.
You're hanging, boys! You're hanging for what you did! You're gonna die, boys! You're gonna die, boys!
Come on. Get him up.
Hang him up! Hang him up! Hang him up!
There they gave the two men a chance to say a final prayer before they pushed them off of a railroad bridge to their death.
Father, we ask that you forgive us for the bad things we done, and forgive these guys for doing all the bad things they're doing right now. Amen.
That's right. Get ready, boys.
William's death came quicker than his son's, as Lewis's rope broke on the first attempt. He was picked back up and hung again. The mob made sure there were no escapes as they bound the men's hands behind their backs and placed sticks in their mouths to quiet any cries they would make. Since Fred was being housed in the hotel, he escaped the fate of his brother and father. The next morning, a photographer took a picture of the men's lifeless bodies hanging from the tracks before they were taken down. They were buried in a small burial plot where William McKinley's daughter had been buried. Upon taking the bodies down, it was discovered that Lewis McKinley's pocket watch had been broken during the previous night's events. The gears quit turning about the same time the owner's life faded away, at 1:57 a.m. Sprague Corley was buried on a hill overlooking his family's homestead. Not too long after Corley's death, his mother's land was sold. Wallace County records indicate there were no more Corleys in the area in the history of Wallace County. His wife remained in contact with some of her McKinley relatives later on in life, but there is no doubt that there was a heavy weight to any of the relationships with her family after the murder of her husband.
All rise.
Fred McKinley was tried months later in Waukene, Kansas.
In the matter before the court today, the jury has returned with a verdict. They find the defendant not guilty.
Even though he had confessed, he was acquitted and went on to live the life of a free man. His father and brother were never given that chance. Was he truly not guilty? Did they just see him as a young man that got caught up in a bad family fight? Fred's mother and little sister would have to live the rest of their lives with this stain on their family reputation. That's probably why it was never talked about, and why the first indicator I had of anything violent happening in my family was when I found that manuscript on that fateful day. Who wrote that manuscript? Who was the man that owned this house that my mother was now living in? What did my mother know that she didn't tell me? Who actually committed the murder? Were the two that were hung innocent, or did they truly have something to do with it? So many secrets, so many questions, so many lives changed.